What we're going to do is have our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Observe a moment of silence. Thank you. Okay. So we're going to have roll call, and then let's let the minutes show the mayor is not here, but everybody else is. Okay. Minutes. I'm going to assume everyone's had a chance to read the minutes. If not, please do so. Yeah, I see that in here, Shirley. I don't know how I missed it. Because I was really looking for it. Need a motion?
Make a motion, we approve?
I'll second.
Okay, motion's made and seconded. All those in approval of the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, thank you. Next order of business. Recognition of our visitors. Hello. Always nice to see you. Okay, you're up, I guess. Time for the report.
Well, good evening. So this month, you'll see in the month of March, we had a total encounters of 410. Numbers run pretty consistent in reference to the call disposition when it comes to runs that we were dispatched through 911 but canceled versus the ones that we transport and what that kind of looks like in that situation. Pretty consistent as we move through the month. As we move into times, again, I think is something that we should all be very proud of in the community and those that we have serving it because of that response time and the treatment times and that turnaround time, again, staying under that window that we're constantly kind of putting at the benchmark of when we talk about national standards and things like that. When we talk through the time frame in that chart, one thing we noticed in the month of March, which is not a normal statistic, is that the call volume actually spiked an hour earlier than normal. So we saw that spike really being between the 9 to 4 hour window. As I've mentioned in months past, we do add an additional truck from 10 to 6. So that is something we're kind of watching, trending for, making sure that we don't need to adjust those hours to serve the community in the most appropriate way. And then the last report you see there is those trucks in reference to those responding 410 calls, where they actually came from and what station they came from. So one thing that we started doing is we started looking at the stations specific to Bourbon and Milford. So this month in March, you'll see that there's 6 of those calls. We started to look at those 6 and specifically look at those run times and how those compared to our averages that we post, and they're consistent. So what that tells us is that our staff are very well educated on the process of moving trucks, making sure that we always have the appropriate coverage. And even though you see a truck, for example, during the month of March, it says it came from Bourbon. It didn't come from Bourbon when the 911 call came out. It was already moving that way. So I was very proud to see that in our coverage. In the month of March, we also actually just ended a 90-day trial period of adding on additional ambulance. It was our MICU ambulance that we added on in reference to doing transfers from either the local facilities or even this region specifically. So those are patients that take extra hands. Sometimes we had to take 2 ambulances of crews in order to move those patients. And that trial ended in the month of March and was incredibly successful. We found that there was a huge need for that, and we're very excited to bring that on permanently. So that truck will now be another asset to us as our Lutheran EMS in this specific area. We do partner with like Lutheran Ground, Lutheran Air, those services out of Fort Wayne, but this truck is specific to our area. It's already here. We don't have to wait for it to come here, things of that nature. So it's another asset for our community when it comes to needing higher level of care and those abilities to be able to do that. So it is staffed with a nurse, paramedic, EMT, so we have a higher level of abilities and things of that nature. So very excited to see that truck continue, and that trial, like I said, ended in March and was very successful. So, yeah. Yeah.
Where are you housing that?
So that truck is housed out of our Leesburg station, just because that truck is a bigger truck. I'm sure you've seen it, Brandon, from years past. But our stations are shorter, and that truck is longer and taller. So we needed a taller station. So it's just stationed in Leesburg, but it goes anywhere in this region. So it can go anywhere from southern part of Fulton County to Porter. I mean, it's the whole area over here, Logansport, all of those situations. So
is that is that staffed around the clock then?
right now it's just 12 hours a day. 1P to 1A is what we found kind of the peak hours of that critical care area. So, yeah. Any questions?
I have a question. You mentioned
Yeah.
the 9 o'clock
Yeah.
hour there.
Sure.
Yeah, that really sticks out like a sore thumb, literally.
Yeah, yeah.
Was that an aberration, or have you? We only get to see this
Sure.
March. But have you noticed that in
No.
prior months?
No,
Okay.
and prior, so that's why I was saying that we're going to kind of monitor that really closely, because typically we see what you see in this graph. Typically we see that in the 10 o'clock hour, and we see it all the way till about 6 o'clock. But for some reason in the month of March, calls peaked at that 9 o'clock hour. So it's just something that if we need to adjust those hours of that truck from 10 to 6 to 9 to 5, we can easily make that adjustment. So it's just things for us to continue to monitor and observe in our operations.
Do you have any indication what kind of calls they were? Were they traffic related or?
Most of those calls were related to medical reasons.
Really?
Not a lot of motor vehicle, no, during that 9 o'clock hour as I was looking at those, no.
Interesting.
Most medical. A lot of sick medical. And the only thing I can think is, if people are getting up for the day, hey, I don't really feel good. I'm going to try to kind of see if I can take care of it at home. Nope, I sure can't. I need help. And then they peaked. But usually we see it peak more about the 10 o'clock hour. So.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. Any
Other questions, anybody? Okay. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. Appreciate it. Okay, next up is CARES. No,
Fire
it's not.
department
It's the
went
fire department. This is wrong here. Okay, yeah. Fire department, monthly response report. Chief, this is your first time up?
So just to point out, these are March numbers. We're always about a month behind, so when we're looking at these, just some of the notable ones are right there at the top are the mobile home fire and vehicle fire that were punched out for March. Some of the other ones you can see what we did when we assisted other agencies with entrapment in Pierceton, then mobile home fire in Claypool, Winona Lake. Really going down and looking at the CARES numbers and the overall run volume for March. Those have been into the service calls, which is CARES, and Chief Fansel will get into that here in a minute when he talks about CARES. But the overall run volume for March being 290 calls, and I think you're just going to see the call volume continue to increase when we talk about April, May, and the warmer months. Also, the notable number, and we were just talking about this again today, is how many runs overlap. We had 71 calls that were overlapping out of that 290, so roughly about 25% of our call volume. I can tell you today alone, we've had that at least 2 or 3 times today. And with a structure of ours and the size of our department, that really does max the department very quickly. So one EMS call and another EMS call, and we're down almost to no staffing. Thankfully, we have staff chiefs during the daytime to help fill the gaps, but there was 3 calls at the same time before 7 o'clock this morning, so we had nothing left. So those are just kind of things to keep in mind when we're talking about these call volumes and the overlaps. That really does, it's an interesting criteria and an interesting discussion to have. Going down below there, again, we could talk about CARES when Chief Hansel comes up, but a busy month, and again, I only see those numbers going up as the temperatures get warmer. Training hours, 710 training hours, 64 hours of community service. Shirley and I were talking about that today. The report's broken out a little bit more with those hours of community involvement. It's not just pub ed. A lot of those times you'll see smoke detector batteries, smoke detector installs, smoke detector replacements, and how many hours the crews actually spend doing that a month. So roughly 65 hours a month in just service time. It's fairly substantial. So when you want to know what the crews are doing on a daily basis, they're doing a lot. Scrolling on down past events, at the very close to near the bottom, as you can see those dates where those overlap calls happen and what they were and when they were. Kind of interesting just to see that. Again, about 25% of our call volumes are overlaps. And pending your questions, that's the fire report.
I don't recall having having it broken out like this, where the CARES call here with the specifying person in distress versus public service. So it's good to see those broken out, so we know, and I'm looking forward to the CARES update here to see how many of those are just follow-up sort of public service and the others are person in distress CARES, other than 911, typical 911 call. So.
And that's a great segue into our next report. Chief, thank you.
Welcome.
So I did provide the CARES update. Michaela actually put this together for everybody. This is kind of the newsletter that she had talked about doing before. And towards the, about the halfway down the front page here, you can see she kind of broke out some of the highlights of April. And so we're still, we're getting referrals from the police department, the sheriff's office. We recently got one from the mayor's office. We had someone come into City Hall that was having some issues and needed some assistance, and so Michaela responded to that and dealt with him, making sure he got access to the resources he needed. May is Mental Health Month, so we're kind of excited about that. There's a lot of discussion going on right now with the mental health situation within the community. So we're excited about that. We're working on quite a few things behind the scenes that we're not quite ready to talk about yet with some partnerships. So that's exciting. One of the things that Michaela did talk about on the back page of this is the NAMI presentations that we're trying to get set up. We want to actually put together, bring anybody who wants to come and have NAMI they do virtual presentations, just talking about living with mental illness, being a family member of someone with mental illness, and how you can get through that, the resources that are available, and things that we can do as a community to help those people that are dealing with that kind of thing. So it's just another, we kind of talked to Bowen Center about that. They were very supportive of us doing that. Felt like it would be a good addition. Our goal eventually will be to try to get maybe some more local support groups for people who are dealing with mental illness in their own families, and just letting people know that we are a community that supports each other and want to be here to help each other. So that's kind of where we're going with that. This is just the first step towards that thing. As far as what she was dealing with, again, I know I'm kind of going back and forth, but setting people up with mental health services and navigating them to getting them to the resources they need. Just some general community resource navigations. We deal with people who maybe don't have a place to live, or don't have food, or don't have money for utilities, need a home repair. We're trying to navigate all those folks into those resources as we can. lot of different things going on. So dispatch actually is calling one of us on the phone now sometimes and saying, hey, could you go visit with so-and-so? Seems like they're having some issues. We're not going to send an ambulance or the police. We don't think it's a safety thing, but they really need some help. And so we're going out and dealing with that as well. And obviously, any questions that you have, I'm here to answer those as well. I think some of the stuff that's going on now at the state level, there's a lot of money and discussion about putting more money into the communities and community mental health providers with the mental health topic. I'm not sure how that's all going to play out yet. We're waiting to kind of see what's going to happen with that.
That hasn't come to a vote yet.
I believe it passed. I think it's in the House. I think it went through the Senate.
I was away, and I knew it
Yeah.
was coming up, but I wasn't able to follow it at the end. I didn't know if they had to finish that up before the session closed or not.
One of the things that we're talking about, and again, we're not even close to being ready to have a complete discussion about this, is that with some of those discussions, Bowen is our community mental health provider. However, we will navigate people to whoever they need. It may be Bowen, it may be someone else if they have an issue with Bowen, which that happens. But Bowen's been very supportive of that. They are willing to support us as we continue this program. They think it makes a big difference. I just had a meeting with them yesterday. They want us to push forward as we go into this. They see the value in what we're doing. They're very supportive of it, and they're happy to be a partner. So it's been a good partnership for us.
Yeah, I think this is one of the most important things the community's done for a long time. Any questions or thoughts? Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Looks like we have a couple of fund reports, Chief.
So the first one, starting out, the operations budget, going through there, obviously payroll, benefits, insurance are always the big ticket items. As you scroll down through the other expenditures for the month, probably the two that stick out and always will for quite a while is probably diesel fuel and gasoline, but we're still in line with our budget for the year and for the month. Other than that, there wasn't any other large expenditures. So again, pending any questions.
You know how we're doing on the fuel budget?
We're fairly in line with where everything's going. Thankfully, that's all locked in, for the year, so that the cost is not killing us. We have had multiple discussions with crews and staff about just driving habits, you know what I mean? And so far, everything seems to be staying in line, so.
So your question was probably more about fuel consumption, not the cost of the
Yeah,
fuel.
just with the increase in fuel costs, I mean, it makes a difference.
For sure.
The normal everyday things we were doing before cost more because fuel costs more.
And there's no doubt as we start stepping into budget season, having those discussions, that'll be a line item that'll just increase incrementally with everything else, that cost of doing business.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have anything to bring up to the chief? Okay. If not, we'll look at Fund 4410, Equipment Replacement Fund.
One small expenditure, which is basically just equipment other, which is a multitude of things that were expensed out for about $4,400. And again, the equipment replacement fund has multiple things put in it for the year that get expensed out, and these are, so far, everything that has been budgeted for fiscal '23 is being purchased. And thankfully, I can say that we have other large expenditures that are coming soon, but I can tell you, when it's put to the crews to go out and spec these items, for example, dive gear, you know, the budgeted amount that was put in there for this year, I think was between 20 and 25,000. It's going to be roughly about 18. So they do a very diligent job of going out and shopping, getting prices, comparing vendors. Everybody understands what kind of budget we have with equipment, so they're very diligent and try to keep it within line, or under, for even that matter.
So that new uniform is in there twice. Does that mean we've hired 2 new?
So probably one of those, well, no, this is March report. There would be new hires or people who use their clothing allowance throughout the year. Again, everybody's allotted a certain amount for the year, and it just depends on when they go and purchase uniforms that those claims will hit. And sometimes they're fairly pricey depending on what they're getting.
I would imagine one of those is you.
Well, and you're right, but is this a March or April report, Shirley?
This is
Probably March.
March, okay, so mine'll hit in April. You'll see,
Okay.
you'll see part of mine in April, so.
Okay.
It's probably, yeah, Kevin and,
Right,
Bryce,
Bryce
yeah.
Good, yeah, and Kevin. Yeah, and truthfully, when somebody first comes onto the department, there's a big expenditure for all brand-new stuff. And then as they hit year 2, 3, 4, there's hardly nothing because the uniforms last a little while, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does, everything's going up. I mean,
Yeah.
we were just pricing a pair of pants the other day, and I'm getting off task, but $60 for one pair of pants. Yeah, so.
That does not surprise me at all. Okay, any questions for the chief? Okay, thank you, chief.
Welcome.
Appreciate it.
Need a motion to approve those?
Yeah, I was gonna say, Mike, you might want to entertain motions to approve the expenditure.
You know,
reports.
I should do that, shouldn't I? Thank you for keeping me on point. Okay, so let's go back to 2243, the operating fund.
Move
And
we
we'll-
approve?
Sorry?
I said I'll make the motion, we approve.
Okay,
I second.
okay. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, passes. Fund 4410. If everyone likes that, I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Good to go. Thank you. And thank you, Andrew. Any unfinished business anyone wishes to, hearing none, we'll move on to new business. Fire chief employment, agreement. Andrew, is this something maybe you want to, it's a legal document, you want to talk about it just for a minute or two?
Sure, just very briefly, I did review the employment agreement, and it's fairly standard and in line with most everything that I would want to see in there to govern the relationship between the city and this board and the new fire chief. So my recommendation would be to approve it.
Okay. Any questions or comments from this board? Hearing none. Do we need to approve this, make a motion?
sir.
I'll make a motion that we accept the fire chief employment agreement.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All those in agreement, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Next would be State Homeland Security Grant.
It is just a reimbursement grant. What it will do is fund lumber for collapse rescue training. There's also a couple pieces of equipment in there that have been shown that are needed through after-action reports for different incidents that we've been on. But the biggest is improving our next generation of collapse rescuers. The COVID years kind of put us behind And us being part of a bigger team in the district that used to have anywhere between 120 and 150 members, we're down to about 50 or 60. So that's what this lumber does. It helps us train the next group of people. Brandon, you started out with us, and actually we are getting ready to train our third group now as far as structural collapse. That'll probably be something that will take place next year, because there's a couple other classes that they have to get before they get there. But that's what this grant does, just helps us fund those.
So you're applying for a grant?
Yep.
Okay.
And the notice of award, they said, will be somewhere in October or November.
October, okay.
That's a shocking number of the team members, but
Yeah.
I totally understand with COVID shutting everything down. I was talking to a couple of guys and they were saying that trying to get things going again after a period of inactivity because of COVID, so
Yes.
it's good
Yeah.
to hear that's starting to move again.
Trying.
Chief Mayo, you were part of that in your prior life, weren't you?
I was, and the funny thing is I've done a lot of training in my past life in another place with Warsaw and a bunch of other team members, and COVID was one setback, but the retirements and the
Oh.
attrition rate is also something that is, the fire service is going to be in bad shape in a couple of years if we don't continue to bring in a wave of new people to train them and get them up to speed, because the knowledge that people are taking out when they leave, we have 2 retirements of battalion chiefs this year, and they're taking 40 plus, 50 plus years out the door with them. And one of them being Battalion Chief Brubaker, who was a TRT guru once upon a time.
Yeah.
And so that knowledge, yeah, it's walking right out the door. So the training to replace that, it's paramount.
Does there seem to be a interest amongst the newer?
Yeah, actually, right now, so with Chief Holderman, when he was here, he capped the team at members. But right now, we have probably roughly, I would say 6 or 7 to get through trench and structural collapse, which that will then put us back up to where everybody is at least to the operations level.
How many do we have left on the district team now?
Well, that's one of the best things. Actually, Warsaw sets the best out of most of the departments. Next to us, South Bend has more people than what we do still left on the team, but we are second, which is surprising
Interesting.
because
Yeah.
we used to be one of the smallest departments. Now we're at the top. And actually, we are working with Elkhart and Goshen, since they're close, in technical rescue and also working on the hazmat capabilities.
So this application goes to the Indiana Department of Homeland
Yep.
Security. Okay. Andrew, do we need to take any legal action on this, or is this just an information?
Typically, we take a,
We have
entertain a
to
motion
approve the
to
request
give
for the
permission
grant?
to apply.
The application, okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll make that motion.
Okay,
I'll second.
thank you, Gordy. Motion's been made and seconded. Any further questions? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes.
Thank you.
Once again, thank you, Assistant Chief. Moving on, we have some travel requests. I think this probably goes back to the chief.
Some of these have already occurred, including mine. That was, FDIC was last week. Thankfully, some of these have very little cost incurred with them, and a lot of these are just, again, like the training courses that we were just talking about, and maybe like a fire officer class in there as well. So again, with our budget, we don't do what I would consider elaborate, outlandish training. We try to stick to the bare bones and get people what they need for promotion or to stay relevant with our training, so.
So 2 are passed and 3 coming up.
How was FDIC, by the way?
It was amazing. It's good every year. I think this is the 17th year I've been in attendance, and the discussion on the aerial, our aerial in Warsaw is 20 years right now, so the discussion on replacing that's coming up, and we were able to go down to the show and look at the latest and greatest and see what's out there and try to compare apples to watermelons and have a discussion about a new ladder truck. So it's always good to do it, because you just can't come up with all the ideas yourself, and that's why we do network sharing down there. So phenomenal.
Any other questions? Need a motion?
I'll move to approve it.
Thank you, Gordy.
Second.
Thank you. Got a motion to approve in a second. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes. Thank you. Agenda item number 7, other matters that may come before the board. Are there any? No? Okay. No items carried forward. Visitors, I think we've heard from everybody. Any last minute thoughts or comments?
One small detail.
Yes.
For June's meeting, I will not be in attendance because that's the move from south to north. So Chief Bollinger will be here giving the reports and such. So just want to give everybody a heads up if there's something that you want ahead of time that you want to see or talk about. I'll make sure it's prepped.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew, anything on your end?
No, sir.
Okay. So we need a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Second. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Yes, ma'am. Glad to do it. Anytime. Anytime. Probably hate this weather, don't you?
Well, when it's May, I'm ready for the warmer stuff. Gosh, I'm ready for some warmer weather.
I know it. This has just been awful.
It has. Last 2 days have been
Chris, this microphone system.
cold and wet is not my favorite. I can
push it
handle
once,
cold
just
or
wait.
wet.